Everybody, we have some breaking news in bowling. Just recently, earlier this morning, what is it, October 8th, we had a bunch of bowling balls get announced from Brunswick. As we talked about yesterday in the live, we assumed there'd be bowling balls. Track put out a little teaser, and we have that ball up right now. We had a teaser from Radical too. So we had 5 bowling balls get announced, technically 6. I'll talk about the 6th one at the very end of the video. But we have 5 bowling balls to talk about today. These are going to be my original initial reactions. I haven't read much about them. I did a little bit of research on the cover stocks that they're using and the cores to see if they're unique or different or anything like that. But otherwise, we're going to talk about every single one. Make sure you drop a sub if you enjoy what we're doing here, or a follow if you're over on the TikTok side. But otherwise, let's get into the bowling balls. Bowling ball number 1. We have the Track Criterion. The Criterion, really good looking bowling ball. I saw somebody in my comments already posted that it looks like an Idle Pearl. It has similar colorways, which is really good, really cool colorways. I'm a sucker for purple, blue, and teal, so looks awesome. But what is it? This ball is an asymmetrical solid bowling ball from Track. Now, we haven't had an asymmetrical solid ball from Track in a minute. What this ball pretty much is the archetype. If you guys remember the Track archetype from about 3-ish years ago, this is going to be very, very similar to it. Reading on the numbers, let's zoom in. I want to keep the bowling ball on the screen, but there we go. Zooming in a little bit, bowlers have put their trust in Track, yada, 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 Paradox, Paragon, and Archetype. So this is a combo of all of those bowling balls, Paradox, Paragon, and the Archetype, all really good balls from Track. People really like the Archetype, a little more than I expected personally. But looking at it, Criterion will be the choice when needing a ball unafraid of oil. The choice when you need traction, but you cannot sacrifice energy on the back end. That hits very, very well what it looks like this ball is supposed to be. Reading more, the most advanced QR and HK22 cover to put on a track ball with the Criterion MD core. What does that all mean? Let's start off with the cover stock. It is QR12 solid HK22C. Now, HK22C is what was on things like the Effect and the Pure Envy and a lot of really good bowling balls. I believe it was on the Vaporize too. Don't quote me on that though. HK22C is like a different type of HK22, a little bit beefier, a little bit boosted. QR12 solid is something that we have kind of seen in the past. Now, I looked it up on bowl.com. Love this website. They have a ton of international and domestic bowling balls, just kind of database on it. And you can sort it by cover stock. Looking at QR11 solid, we had, ignore the first one, that was an overseas ball. We had the OG archetype from August or February of 23, so that was actually pretty recently. We had the Paragon, and then we had the Strata. The Track Strata was one of the first balls to come out when when Brunswick bought out all the Ebonite brands. The Paragon was a really good ASIM solid ball, pretty strong core. The archetype, though, is the most similar to this one based on the numbers, based on the RG, the differential, and all that jazz. So in 15 pounds, we have a 2.50 RG, 0.52 differential, and an 0.18 ASIM differential. Now, my prediction, my thought, reading a little bit more on this ball, getting a little deeper on it, this isn't going to be your strongest ball in the bag. This isn't an Extreme Envy. This isn't a Mesmerize. This is something a little bit below those. It's always, all of these balls aren't usually the strongest hooking bowling balls on the market. They're usually a step down, kind of like when we talk about the Black Widow 3.0, kind of like when we talk about the XL, something like an Evoke. All of those balls are never the strongest balls that you could possibly buy, but it's close. It's still a really good asymmetrical, solid core and cover numbers. This seems like it's going to be a usable strong ASIM ball. Now, it does come sanded, 2,500, 2,000 grit Sia Air, so it's not going to be polished like the Wicked Collision was for Deviate. This is going to be sanded. It's going to be big. It's going to be very slow, but in general, I think it's going to get a little further down lane than some of those other big, strong asymmetrical options. Now, nothing else too crazy about this. It has dynamic core. It has HK22. It has dot technology, you know, all the big Brunswick things. They hit all 3 big dots that they try to go for. No pun intended on dot. But in general, this ball is going to be the brand new big strong ball from Track. If we look at their bowling balls right now, they don't have much in general. They do have the Archetype Hybrid, and they do have the Theorem still in. That Theorem will probably not go away for a long time. Archetype Hybrid, I'm guessing it's going to be on its last leg going forward. But then the Criterion is the new big ASIM. So outside of that, you're going to have to go all the way down to a stealth hybrid is going to be the next smooth, weaker ball from it. And then the Cypher after that. So this helps beef up the track bowling arsenal a little bit, but there are still a lot of asymmetrical solid balls from the Brunswick brands. I really hope this one's good. This seems like a more usable Extreme Envy. And I'm glad this one's not a hybrid like the last batch of bowling balls. So that's a really good sign. But in general, TLDR, this is really going to be an evolution of the track archetype. If you liked the archetype, I would keep your eyes open on the Criterion. If you didn't, if you hated the archetype, I would probably skip this ball. Also an evolution of the old Paragon, for anyone who remembers that, and the Paradoxes. The Paradoxes were really good. A lot of people liked those. This is many years away from the Paradox, many years after, so it probably won't be as similar, but it looks really similar to in archetype. But we have 4 more bowling balls to hit. Let's keep going down the list. Next, we're going over to Brunswick Bowling for the Ethos Hybrid. So the Ethos was a bowling ball that, surprisingly, after reading a little more, they don't have it in this presser piece, but this was one of their best-selling bowling balls of 2023, the original Ethos, the Pearl version, which is crazy because I didn't think that ball was that money, but apparently people loved it. So that's awesome. That's great to hear. That's really good to know that it did so well. So now the hybrid is here. This looks like an ebonite ball. For anyone who knows, ebonite loves making bowling balls that are like purple and blackish and like a white gray. That's exactly what this is. This looks like this looks like it'd be a typical ebonite bowling ball. It looks similar to like a GB4 hybrid to a certain degree. There's another ball this looks like. Let me know down in the comments what ball you think it does look like, because I know they've used this colorway before. In general, purple balls don't sell that well, by the way, which is weird. I'm a little surprised by that, but there's a lot of purple. But what is this ball? What does it actually do? Let's zoom in a little bit, because I'm going to remember that one day. Core numbers, we have a 2.48 RG and an 0.53. So this is a symmetrical hybrid bowling ball. Symmetrical hybrid is a good sign. So it's going to be earlier than an Ethos, but it's going to be later than a lot of those other symmetrics. Based on the numbers, I have a feeling it's going to be a little weaker than a stealth hybrid, especially when we get to the cover stock. So 248, 053, that means it's a little bit stronger. It's very similar to phase AI territory, or phase territory in general. Idle territory, game breaker territory. Not as much game breaker, actually. The diff is a little bit high. So this is going to probably try to be a play off of the Game Breaker 5. Hopefully that means the GB4 hybrid isn't getting dumped away, but this seems like that's what it's trying to be. Now, of course, that isn't a Brunswick specific ball, but it's in the Brunswick brands. But what do we have for the cover stock? We have more HK22, HK22C again. They've sold HK22C stuff so well, they have to stick with it. Like, it's rude of them not to. So many people love HK22C right now. But it is SH 4.0 hybrid. Now, the only reason that should sound familiar is we have the Knockout Bruiser. That was the last time SH has been used. So if we go to cover stocks, we're going to search SH. I don't know if it's actually going to work. It doesn't, so we're just going to use the mark. We have SHO solid, and that is it. So the only time this has been used is on the Knockout Bruiser, for anyone who remembers that ball. Not a very well-liked ball, from what I remember. Similar-ish numbers, but that seems like what it's trying to go for. This is pretty much a new Knockout Bruiser. That's really what it is. 2.48 RG, 0.53 differential. It's going to really fall in a medium smooth category, especially because looking at the cover stock, it is sanded. It is not polished. So they probably want it to lean more on the solid end of their arsenal. So it's going to be a sanded hybrid. That's really the main stuff. It acts like a Knockout Bruiser. Where does it fall in all of their current bowling balls? Let's see. Brunswick's website is kind of garbage for seeing some of this stuff because they put all their other things, their retired balls and all their plastics and visiballs in here. Here's a ball we're going to talk about in a minute. But in general, where is it going to fit? There aren't many symmetrical balls that Brunswick owns. Like, they have the Ethos, which, oh, that's retired. Just kidding. Never mind. They don't have an Ethos. They have an Endeavor, lower end pearl ball. They have the Ultimate Defender, which is an ASIM. They have the Beyond Infinity ASIM, Intense Mindset ASIM, Mesmerize ASIM, Vaporize ASIM, and then the Ethos is a sim. So the Ethos is kind of in its own territory with Brunswick bowling balls, which will be very, very interesting going forward to see what they all have. But this is really going to be a medium smooth bowling ball. Let's jump over to the next one, the brightest one, probably the best colorway on the list, the Ivory Rhino Pro. So an all white Rhino Pro, it's a little bit different. I don't know why I did it like that. But let's see, what do we have for numbers? Core numbers, we have a 2.57 RG, insanely high RG, insanely low differential in 032. This ball is weak. This is going to be one of the weakest bowling balls that Brunswick has made. This is going to be weak sharp by far, hands down. It is very much a weak and sharp bowling ball. This is one of the highest RGs on the market, one of the lowest differentials on the market. That means the ball is going to go 90 feet. So if you bowl on really burnt lanes, this ball might be for you. If you bowl on wood, really burnt lanes, you like to play straighter, but it gets too burnt up, this might be a really good play for you. This is a very unique bowling ball, which is cool to see. I love seeing more unique cores and covers coming out. That is awesome for the average person. So I would be recommending this as a burn ball, as a late in the day, or if your lanes are just torched bowling ball. But let's get into what is the cover stock. HK22 Activator Plus 3.0 Pearl. That probably sounds familiar to Brunswick fans because this is already on a bowling ball. This is on the Endeavor. The Endeavor only came out in February, by the way, kind of wild. But these numbers are actually weaker than an Endeavor. So if you think the Endeavor is weak, this ball is even weaker. Same cover stock, just weaker core. It has that Rhino core. I believe it's the same core from the Teal Rhino Pro series because it is a Rhino Pro. So this is going to be just super low-end bowling ball, really cool colorway. There is one important question. For anybody that's hung around with Brunswick for the last 5+ years, how does this compare to the Gold Rhino from years past? If you guys remember, there was this vintage Gold Rhino Pro. I actually owned one. This was one of my first bowling balls. How does it compare? Well, there is a massive difference. The massive difference is the core is massive compared to the new Rhino. The Gold Rhino, which didn't hook that much, was a 252 RG 048 differential, much earlier, much smoother than the current white Ivory Rhino Pro. So what was this one coming at? It had Fortified Pearl. I don't know where that stood, but in general, this is going to be much weaker than the new Ivory Rhino Pro will be much weaker than the Gold Rhino Pro from years past. But that is it for Brunswick. 3 balls done, 2 more to go. We're going over to Radical. We have the bright yellow, so apologies. It is very, very bright. It's a very bright color that they use on their website. But we have the ZigZag Solid. We have a brand new ZigZag. A lot of people liked the ZigZag, so this is going to be a new evolution to it. A solid cover stock. Everything else is identical. 2501 RG, 045 differential, intermediate def of 015. Makes it a moderate to slightly weaker asymmetrical bowling ball. The core for it is designed to allow a greater change in differential numbers after drilling. That is really important to know. Make sure you have your layout locked down. You can make this ball insanely strong. You can make it insanely weak. As it says, the total differential can go from 030, which is what that Rhino was at, super weak, to 057, which is about where the Black Widow series is. So you can really change that differential. Same with the int diff. It can be as low as like an old Rotogrip Rubicon or a Tour Dynamics or an Ion Pro, or as strong as the Max Bias. So this ball has a lot of versatility, which is a good sign. More purple. They are 3 for 4 on purple, by the way. Just make sure to keep that count going. Purple bowling balls unite. What else do we have? Unfortunately, Radical doesn't like naming their cover stocks anything too crazy. This is just HK22 Hyperkinetic Solid. Just HK22 Solid. They don't really tell us much. It is a solid asymmetrical bowling ball. It tells us literally nothing else. I wish it did, but there is very little going on it. There is a comparison chart, which we can check quick. So the ZigZag is not going to be the strongest bowling ball on the market. Thank you, Radical, for making this, by the way. But it is going to be above the Conspiracy, a little bit sharper and a little bit earlier. So it's going to be earlier and sharper than a Conspiracy, but it is going to be later and sharper than a Max Bias. Much, much stronger than the other bowling balls in their arsenal right now. So that is the ZigZag Solid. It is an asymmetrical solid. If you like your ZigZag, make sure to go check this one out. I believe the OG ZigZag is discontinued. Let's go to the current bowling balls and see. If we do a quick little look-see, someone is honking outside. There is no more. Yeah, this is the only ZigZag right now. So if you like your OG ZigZag, you want something smoother, go with the ZigZag Solid. But finally, we have one more ball left. We have a brand new bowling ball. It is not a just change of cover stock for a piece. It is the No Doubt. The No Doubt has a super symmetrical core. I don't know. I don't know the naming or anything. Radical's always interesting with their naming stuff. The goal is to create a ball with asymmetrical characteristics, yet a longer hook window so it can be used more often. A 2.485, pretty much a 2.49 RG, will round it up. A differential of 0.51. So it is a middle of the road, slightly stronger symmetrical bowling ball. But if we look at the core, it is HK22 plus pearl. So this is a pearl cover stock. It's going to be a middle of the road pearl symmetrical ball. Think like around a Troublemaker Pearl, think around that kind of range-ish, a little stronger than a Scorpion Strike. It's going to be a little bit smoother too. They don't go into an insane amount of detail on this super symmetrical core. They just say the goal is to make it feel like an ASIM without being an ASIM. The core looks a little bit interesting for anyone who cares. Like, oh, that's 1312. There we go. It has this little like bump on it, which is interesting. So it's supposed to maintain axis rotation longer, making it less likely to roll forward. So they want it to be angular. They want this thing to be angular, but Radical is not known to make angular bowling balls. Radical makes very smooth reactions and they're very good at it. So I'm curious to see how this one lines up compared to the other pearls on the market today, especially from the Brunswick side. This is good. We do need more of those middle, medium sharp, just not too strong, not too weak pearl bowling balls because Storm has very few right now. Motive doesn't really have an insane amount. They just have the Hyper Venom. The Brunswick brands really have the Scorpion Strike that they lean on pretty heavily. There isn't much in that range, so I'm glad Radical is coming out with something that's close. Now, if we looked at that, there it is. If we look at the chart again, the No Doubt is kind of just right in the middle of everything. It is above the Rattler Big Bite in terms of response time, but it's also going to be smoother and actually later than an Outer Limits Pearl. Makes sense. The Outer Limits Pearl is an ASIM, where the Hitter Pearl is an ASIM. So it is cool to see that is just a middle of the road shiny bowling ball. I am very excited to see how that thing rolls. This is probably one of my, if I had to pick, this is my sleeper pick for best ball in this brunch. But in general, I think I'm going to go the Ivory Rhino Pro being the best one because it's just so unique. The Criterion is probably going to be really good too. I hope it's going to be good. Their track's really good at making this kind of shape. But I hope this Ivory Rhino is going to be the best one on the list. But with that, that is my quick preview, my first initial reactions to all the new Brunswick bowling balls being announced. I will have reviews on my TikTok page of every single one of these. Otherwise, we will build an arsenal about this over the next couple weeks. Something I completely forgot to mention, two things I forgot to mention. One is release day is, I believe, I want to check to be sure, October 24th. October 24th, 2024 is when this one gets dropped. It is a little bit after the Phase AI, and it's right after the Raptor Rush. So this is going to be the last one in the list. The other bowling ball that got announced, woo, a Visiball with the Ebonite logo. I don't know what the swirlies are for. If you want a Visiball with the Ebonite logo, you can go for it. There are better looking Visiballs, I'll be honest. If you want a Visiball, Visiballs, remember, are more prone to cracking out than a regular plastic ball. Go get a T-Zone, go get a White Dot. Brunswick is the best at making plastic balls. Go check those out. Visiball is going to be a little pricier, a little bit more prone to cracking. But yeah, that's the sixth ball. So it's 5 balls plus a plastic ball. So meh. All right. But that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much. Make sure to drop a sub if you enjoy the content. I'll have a lot of bowling stuff coming out over the next couple of weeks. Hope you guys enjoyed. Otherwise, we will have a live going on sooner rather than later discussing all of these bowling balls. Thanks for watching.